Most piano players miss something huge in measure one. And once you see it, you'll never look at your music the same way. And this is because the opening measure of any piece holds the key to everything. Rhythm, fingering, articulation, dynamics, all of the things that make the piece sound beautiful and musical. And how you start with that first measure will either build your confidence or break it. Now today, make sure that you stay tuned until the end of the video because I have a crazy announcement and you're not going to want to miss it. Hey piano people, I'm Ashlee. I've practiced over 20,000 hours. I've taught adult piano players from all over the world, and I spent over $100,000 on 2 piano performance degrees. Here on Ashlee Young Music Studio, I teach you how to practice smarter, not harder. Let's dive in. Today, we're going to be talking about Beethoven's For Elise, one of the most iconic pieces in the piano repertoire. And the first thing that most piano players miss in measure one is rhythm. Okay, so measure one is a little bit complicated with this piece because we actually begin with what's officially called an anacrusis. Now that is the fancy musical term for a pickup beat or a pickup measure. Another way you can think about it is an incomplete measure. So if we look at the very beginning of For Elise, we are in the time signature of 3/8, which means that the 8th note is getting 1 beat and there's 3 beats in each measure. But you'll notice we have this miniature measure or this incomplete measure that actually has 2 16th notes in it, which get 1 beat total. Now, I'm not gonna go deep into always for every piece how to figure out how to count that, but in this piece, we start on beat 3, okay? And that's very, very different than starting on beat 1, and we're going to talk about it. Now, if you wanna know how to figure out pickup beats or anacrusises in any piece of music, I go over that in my rhythm course, so I'll link that in the description below. But for this piece, we start on beat 3. So when you play For Elise, it actually starts like this. 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. Now, the reason that that's so important is because most people don't pay attention to the rhythm. Most people start and they just make this part up. If I'm being honest, they make it up and they just kind of do it by ear. And so they'll start and they make it sound like 1, right? And they just do like however many they feel like. And obviously that's wrong. We want to do the correct number of repetitions of that E and that D sharp as Beethoven intended it, but we also want to make sure that we're starting on beat 3 because starting on beat 3 feels different than starting on beat 1. Generally speaking, in Western classical music, anytime we have beat 1 of a measure, we can feel it, right? There's a slight emphasis on beat 1. And so if we start this piece and we play 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, not only does it, first of all, mess up everything that comes after it, but it also, the beginning feels completely different. Now, if we start it correctly with the correct rhythm, we start 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2. And we're feeling those ones with the emphasis that they deserve, those downbeats or beat 1 of every single measure. So this is huge. This is not only huge in this piece, this is huge in any piece. We always want to make sure that we start off with the correct rhythm because not only does it make this piece sound how it's supposed to sound, it also sets you up for success because every time you play For Elise, if you're winging it and you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're kind of playing like E, D sharp, however many I feel like, and then I'm starting, you are not being consistent. And your brain cannot remember anything that is inconsistent. So if you're feeding your brain different information or different notes, essentially, every single time you play that little introduction, then you're never going to remember it. Okay, you're never going to be able to actually play it accurately or musically because you can't remember it. All right, so count it out loud. Make sure that you're doing the proper rhythm, not only in this piece, but in all of your pieces, but especially in this piece, okay? Now, the second thing that most piano players miss in the first measure of For Elise is technique. And I'm actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do something I've never done. I'm going to give you the second and third thing at the same time. And we're gonna talk about them because they are intertwined. The second thing most people miss is technique. And the third thing most piano players miss is fingering. And they're intertwined because if you choose the wrong fingering, you won't be able to have proper technique, if that makes sense. Now, a lot of what I see when people start this piece is they'll play the E and the D sharp with 5 and 4. So with their pinkies and their 4th finger. And so we're starting and we're doing E and D, E with our pinky and D sharp with our 4th finger. And we're going back and forth like this. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you. I hate this for several reasons. First of all, whenever we're playing a white key to a black key, it can be a little bit challenging because of the geography of the piano. Because the white key is longer and it's lower down, and the black key is shorter, right? So it starts further back and it's higher up. They're just different. And we have to make certain accommodations with our fingers in order to be able to play those notes evenly. And so we're starting on a white key and a black key, and that's challenging. And then to do it with our fifth and our fourth finger, those are the weakest fingers in the hand. The fifth and the fourth finger are the fingers that, regardless of how you practice or what you do, will always be the weakest fingers of the hand. And that's just because of anatomy, right? That's not because you need exercises. That's not because you need to go work out or like make them stronger. It's just the anatomy of the hand. Even if you use them a lot, even if you're a professional pianist, they're still going to be the weakest fingers in comparison to the other fingers. And so we don't want to start a piece on the weakest fingers if we can avoid it. And so even like well-known reputable sources will recommend that you start on 5 and 4, and I'm going to say don't do it. Don't do it, okay? Start on 3 and 2 if you can. Now, those are the preferred fingers for starting, and also anytime you see this figure in the piece, because it comes back over and over and over again, and so we can be consistent with that fingering. But the other thing that that does when you choose fingers 3 and 2 is it facilitates, like I would say, like a more neutral starting point so that you can have proper technique. Because when we start this piece, we don't want to think about our individual fingers moving like this, right? We want to think about how can we rotate the wrist ever so slightly and use the elbow to guide us up and down the keys. And so I want to really show you the difference so that you can listen and see what I'm talking about. So if I start this piece, even if I'm using the correct fingers, if I play each individual finger moving on its own, it's very robotic, it lacks flow, it lacks grace, and it's not very musical, right? But if I can, first of all, loosen up with this up-down motion, and then also loosen up with this like rotation and this side-to-side motion, and loosen up my elbow, I want you to see what can happen and how it can sound. Now, I won't maybe on the first measure, but you can see it's more graceful, it's more melodic, it's more beautiful. And part of that is just because I'm not playing it with a really stiff wrist and I'm not trying to use each individual finger to produce the sound. Because if you've seen any of my other teachings here on YouTube or you have any of my courses where I talk about it, you know that dynamics and all of the sound that you produce at the piano actually has to do with the weight of your arm dropping into the keys and not the control of every single individual finger. Okay, so we want to utilize that looser wrist, that rotation, and we want our elbow to be a little bit more free so that we can move around the piano with freedom and grace. I talk a lot more about how to utilize your body to get the desired sound out of the piano in my bundle of 10 technique breakthroughs, and I will link that in the description as well. Now here in this video, I know we just covered a lot, but we're actually just scratching the surface of this piece for Elise. We've touched on what comes not only in the first measure, but in what comes later in the piece as well. But this piece has a B section and a C section, and there's a lot more to it. And a lot of what we just covered is outlined in the Confidence Roadmap. The Confidence Roadmap is the guide to learning a piece from the ground up with confident musical expression. It helps you learn any piece twice as fast. And you can check that out. I'll put the link in the description. But also, I put together a bundle of videos where I go over this piece for Elise in real time with real students who are working on it. And so if you want more about For Elise specifically, you can go ahead and grab that bundle. It's called Beyond the First Measure with For Elise, and I'm gonna link it right here on the end screen as well as in the description. It's a crazy low price so that it's accessible to as many people as possible. And if you like this video, you're going to love where that bundle takes you next. Grab it right here. Happy practicing.